Hi, I'm Kendra with Where's Moon Astrology, and today I'm talking about Gemini and Scorpio compatibility. So, Gemini is mutable air and Scorpio is fixed water. Now, these are actually in conjunct signs, meaning that they are 150 degrees away from one another in the zodiac, and they have basically nothing in common. They don't have polarity in common, they don't have element in common, they have absolutely nothing in common. Now, there are strengths and weaknesses to every pairing in the zodiac, and just because a pairing is difficult does not mean that it can't work. If you love your partner and you're conscious of the potentials of this dynamic, it can obviously work. It just is going to require a little more patience and a little more understanding with this combination than most. But that's actually a good thing because I feel that when there are challenges present in a relationship, that's actually a really positive thing. And the reason I feel that way is because when things are too easy, it doesn't really induce growth. I think trines and easy aspects between two people can actually be very nice and they can feel very good, but they don't really induce growth. And I feel that the more challenging a relationship is, the more opportunity there is for growth. Even if that relationship isn't ultimately going to go the distance, you can grow as a person from being in this relationship. And you can make it work with your partner, regardless of what's going on in your chart. With Gemini and Scorpio, I think that some of the positives are that Gemini is a very intellectual sign. Gemini is mutable air, so changeable ideas. This means that their ideas can change. They really love to, debate. They love to play with different ideas, look at different perspectives. That's kind of fun for Gemini. And then Scorpio is all about depth and research and hidden knowledge and things of that nature. So with one sign's, intellectual orientation and the other sign's orientation towards depth, this can actually be very compatible in the intellectual realm. Because while Scorpio is a water sign, they are also deeply concerned with, again, research and understanding things on a depth level. Gemini would be very good at presenting Scorpio with new perspectives. Now, Scorpio is a fixed sign, so they might not change their own perspective very easily, but if it's something that Scorpio hasn't really made a decision on, it can actually stimulate Scorpio to research, and it can stimulate them to want to understand a topic on a deeper level. And as Scorpio gets deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole, they'd be able to present Gemini with more information that Gemini just loves being stimulated intellectually. So as Scorpio goes deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole, they would be able to give Gemini something to kind of chew on and go over mentally. And I think that this could be a very positive pairing on an intellectual level because of that. Now, Scorpio might go a little deeper than what Gemini would prefer, but as long as it's stimulating to Gemini intellectually, they can really get on board with that and they can really have a lot of fun with that. Another way that these two signs can get along really well is that they're both pretty dismissive of social norms. So, you have Scorpio, who is all about the taboo, all about depth, all about understanding things, regardless of what comes up, regardless whether it looks dark, whether it looks scary, whether it is socially acceptable or not. Scorpio doesn't care. Scorpio wants the truth, the deep, dark, evil truth. And Gemini is just a very rebellious sign. They don't really care a lot for social norms in general. Gemini cares about what's fun, stimulating, what is going to get them going intellectually. They care about change. They care about accepting new ideas. Again, mutable air, changeable ideas. They don't care much for what's right, what's wrong. They care about understanding. They care about activity. They care about social progress. I wouldn't say that Gemini is the most oriented towards social progress out of the zodiac, but they are about progress with that mutable airs. The logic, the intellectualism, and the mutability. They care about that change. They care about changing things on an intellectual level. They're dismissive of tradition for that reason. They're dismissive of archaic ideas. So these two can actually have a lot of fun rebelling. They can have a lot of fun rebelling together. And I picture Scorpio and Gemini as a very rebellious couple, people who fly in the face of what would be considered normal. And it might be a very volatile relationship. I think, Harley and the Joker, Bonnie and Clyde kind of thing. Those would be extreme criminal examples. But the point being that they don't care so much for those social norms, and they would be probably pretty rebellious together for that reason. In different ways, they would complement each other, if you can consider it that, because it could get pretty crazy. One more word about the positives of Gemini and Scorpio before I move on. Again, Gemini has this very nervous nature. A lot of Gemini placements can suffer from anxiety. Actually, pretty much every Gemini I've ever met has suffered from some form of anxiety. So you have this anxious influence of Gemini. And then you have Scorpio, who is deeply caring of the people they love. They really care about the people they love, and they are willing to do anything for them. So Scorpio can be an extremely calming influence for Gemini when they're having this existential dread and they're having these anxieties, regardless if they are founded or not. Scorpio can really give this outpouring of love and intensity of care that can really be healing for Gemini, unless, it's too intense and it makes Gemini even more anxious. But in general, Scorpio is an intuitive enough sign to understand what Gemini needs in that moment and give that to them. Now for the pitfalls of a Gemini and Scorpio dynamic. Now again, this is an inconjunct pairing, so they don't have a lot in common at all. The first thing that I think about when I think about the pitfalls of Scorpio and Gemini are that Gemini is a very light-hearted sign, very easy breezy, airy-fairy. They do have this nervous thing going on. Mercury, Gemini's ruler, also rules the nervous system, so they can have a lot of nervous tendencies. But they are generally pretty free-spirited, pretty light-hearted, and Scorpio is anything but lighthearted. Scorpio is, again, about darkness and intensity and depth. Gemini is also a very flirtatious sign, and Scorpio is a very possessive sign. So Gemini can actually flirt unconsciously with anybody they interact with as a way of communicating, as a way of interacting. Flirting can just be another way of socializing for Gemini. Scorpio does not see it that way. Scorpio is deeply possessive. They want to consume their partner. And that sounds really bad, but it's just Scorpio is about intimacy. They want an intimate connection. And if they feel that other people are getting the kind of attention that they're getting from Gemini, it can be very difficult for Scorpio, and it can turn pretty toxic pretty fast because Scorpio is trying to hold on to something and possess something that doesn't want to be possessed. Gemini is mutable. They don't want to be fixed. They don't want to be held in one place, and Scorpio wants to hold their partner in one place. And that's not me talking badly about Scorpio. They have every right to have their needs met in the same way that Gemini does, but their needs conflict with one another. So there will be some understanding required in a Gemini and Scorpio dynamic for this reason. Scorpio may end up trying to control. It doesn't even have to come out as, abusive control. It can just be asking Gemini to curb certain behaviors or whatever. Telling Gemini something makes them uncomfortable. So when I say control, I use that term loosely, and I'm not pointing the finger at Scorpio, just to be clear. That's not going to go very well because, again, Gemini is rebellious. Gemini is a rebellious sign. So if they can be rebellious together, Gemini and Scorpio, then this can be fun for everyone, at least fun for those two. But if Scorpio is giving Gemini a reason to rebel against them, that can be very toxic for the relationship. Gemini is not going to be controlled. They're not going to be told what to do, but Scorpio may try to assert some of that control, and Gemini may pretend to comply with that, but they aren't going to comply with that. Gemini is dual-natured, and even if they really believe that they can adhere to some of the expectations that Scorpio has put in place, they'll change their minds. They'll change their ideas because they are changeable ideas. So Gemini changing their mind can also be very, very difficult for Scorpio because Scorpio is so fixed, so intense, and they have decided. When they've decided, they have decided, and they're not flexible on that decision, generally speaking. Gemini changing their minds can be emotional turmoil for Scorpio. Not being able to trust that their partner is going to be the same from one day to the next, so that they're going to show them the same kind of intensity that they are showing Gemini. Scorpio may really have some trust issues with Gemini for this reason. Gemini being this lighthearted, flirtatious influence, and Scorpio being all about that intimacy. Scorpio can really suffer from trust issues with Gemini. Scorpio is already not a very trusting sign. So dealing with somebody who is so changeable, even if Gemini is committed to Scorpio, and I'm not saying that Gemini cannot commit either, but they also can't change who they are. So even if Gemini is fully committed to Scorpio, Scorpio can have a lot of trust issues towards Gemini and feel that that's not something that they can really put their trust in. And then of course, when Scorpio feels that they can't trust their partner, if it's a lower vibration Scorpio, or even just a scared Scorpio, that Scorpio will start playing games. That Scorpio might start withholding affection. That Scorpio might start trying to control what Gemini does, sabotaging things even if it gets really bad. It's like Gemini will really trigger Scorpio's trust issues. And then, of course, Gemini, being that changeable, mutable influence, they're not going to want that control. They might really want to please Scorpio and love Scorpio with all their hearts, but they're not going to want the kind of fixed, intense control that Scorpio is vibing. So Gemini can feel very almost oppressed by Scorpio, wanting to keep them, but not wanting to give up their individuality, not wanting to give up who they are either. And then Gemini might start playing games. Gemini and Scorpio are both very much about playing games, and Gemini can really try to mess with Scorpio's head, or even just give Scorpio half-truths, and when Scorpio finds out that it's a half-truth, it just begins the toxic cycle all over again. And again, both of these people could really, really love each other, but these are things that can really be difficult in a Gemini and Scorpio pairing, and it's really going to be positive if they have more complementary influences between their two charts. On a more surface level, while there is that positive intellectual connection between Gemini and Scorpio, in the sense that Gemini can trigger Scorpio's desire to go deep, to learn, to understand, and Scorpio can unearth more facts for Gemini to mull over, they have different styles. They have different styles in this way, and Scorpio may become kind of obsessed with something. Scorpio may become kind of obsessed with an idea, obsessed with unearthing knowledge, while Gemini has already moved on to the next thing and might get really kind of bored. Gemini gets bored easily, so they might really get bored with Scorpio's obsession with a particular topic, and Scorpio doesn't understand because they're like, okay, we were having fun talking about this yesterday, but Gemini has moved on. Gemini does not stay in one place too long. So overall, I think that the intellectual connection between these two can be really good, can be really positive, can be really fun for everyone. The rebellious influence of this couple can be really fun for both of the people involved, and if you can channel that in a positive way, all the better, because we don't want a Harley and the Joker situation on our hands. There are a lot of potential issues with this, and it stem a lot from, Scorpio's trust issues and Gemini's game playing and their lighthearted influence. No one's wrong in this situation. Anytime you have two incompatible influences, of course there are wrong things that you can do, but just being who they are, that's not wrong. They just need to have a lot of understanding for each other, and they really need to have strong communication. They really need to understand each other's perspective in order to really make this work together. And of course, be willing to compromise, be willing to change. That might be very difficult for Scorpio in particular because Scorpio is fixed, but compromise is going to be very important for any in conjunct pairing. Anyway, that's all I had to say about the Gemini and Scorpio compatibility. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I did want to remind you that I have relationship readings and a bunch of other reading types in my store. I'm leaving the link to that in the description of this video. Once again, I really hope you enjoyed it and have a great day.